Guy, Councilman Oliver Thomas, we're so grateful that you joined us, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. My family's hearts and prayers go out to Bethany, John Emmett, and Lexi and his family to know that we're mourning his loss, and our condolences go out to them. Eric was everybody's friend, but also a very serious journalist.
I want to ask about that because we're all talking about our relationship sitting here with him and anchoring with him, and I've never had to be on the other end of questioning from him. Well, maybe a little. He would grill me every now and then he want to know something, but you know, for you to be sitting in with him in that capacity.
That's a great question. Of course, we all know he had this big personality, right? Yeah. And as an elected official, you had to get prepared. If you weren't prepared for Eric, because he had this way of disarming you, charming, nice. He would talk about something so out of what he really wanted to get to you, right? And you would be comfortable, man. You're having a great conversation. He said, but Oliver, you know what made you do this?
And you're like, whoa.
But he didn't do it in a way where he set you up where you thought, you know, it was kind of like surprise or journalism. If you'd been interviewed by him, you knew at some point he was going to have a good time with you, but he was going to ask you tough
He had a job to do.
questions. Yeah. Randy, you and I talked earlier, you know, at the Black Men's conversation about voting. Yes, and once I got a chance to understand him, I knew I could come to interview him, sit on the morning show, have a good time, but be prepared. He was going to ask you about the city budget, about why the trash wasn't picked up. Yeah. At some point, he was going to have a real good time with you, make you comfortable, and say, you know, but you think that was the right ordinance? you know, you think that? And for me, it got real personal because, you know, my life was real public about what I went through. And him and Sally Ann welcomed me back to do an interview after I came back, you know, from what I went through with my life, and they didn't have to do that. And so, and Eric was like, and him and Sally were both like, so, you know, what's your next chapter? And I didn't expect that, right? But nah, man, come, you know. And that was an interview I didn't expect because I wasn't a public figure anymore. I'd gone through something really serious. And then the last thing I remember was, and your station gets so much credit, he set the table for the renaissance we have in District E now. You know, when he went out there to the Hangout and did a live show and basically highlighted all of the assets of one of the largest African-American communities that had been unfairly stereotyped and branded, he set the table for a lot of the success we're having right now. And that man, I miss him.
As we
I miss him.
Yeah, as we all do.
We all miss him.
Yeah.
What do you think the takeaway is from that perspective? Someone who's not from New Orleans, but championed New Orleans more than anybody, to many people who are from here.
Great question.
You mean he wasn't from New Orleans? Because I can't even remember at this point. That man was from New Orleans.
He graduated from 35 over there in 19, whatever, baby. He was, you know.
When you think about our conversations, right, from Wisconsin to Southern Illinois, to Savannah, back to Madison, here, when I learned that he was a DJ at one point, because I was just like, where does this rhythm? You know, I'm like, man, you like an honorary brother, right? I'm like, where does this rhythm, where does this ability to have fun in any setting? Look, Eric would pop up if there was something happening in the hood or somewhere. Yeah, he did not feel, he felt comfortable everywhere he was. We never looked at him, Brandon, as someone who wasn't from New Orleans. Because you know, when you're from New Orleans, you got this thing about people, if they're not willing to adopt the culture and blend in. Never got that feeling from him. He was gumbo, second line.
Or even more, I'll give you this one. He was pork chop fried hard between two slices of white bunny bread. We talked about that quite a few mornings.
You would say that, and he'd be like, "Oh, I could eat that right now at 6 a.m."
Didn't I say honorary brother?
You mean it.
You know, you would see him in the Maroney and festival events. You know, I often wondered how Bethany and the family is. I mean, because he was still a product of the culture here in this city, man, from Indian culture to second line culture. So I never felt like Eric wasn't from here. I felt like he was somebody who loved us and our culture so much that he wanted us to know that it was part of him. That's how I always felt.
Absolutely, very well put.
And also, you know, I liken this morning show to, honestly, a community table. It's a chance for the community to talk about what's going on in the city on this show. You don't get that anywhere else in this city because that's what this morning newscast is. What do you hope? I mean, I know you guys want this to continue, but what would you suggest? I mean, considering your years of expertise and your relationship with Eric, what is our direction moving forward and keeping his legacy going, but you know, also doing our jobs?
That's a great question, and I think it's what he stood for, what I've watched you and you stand for, and what all of you, your co stands for. Man, the delivery of quality services to citizens. Eric knew how to have a good time, but say, hey man, you know, the trash ought to be picked up on time. The city ought to be safe. The roads and the potholes ought to represent every community. And I think you guys are on track to continuing that. But the thing that I will miss about him was that, and I haven't heard anybody talk about this, but to talk about the interracial couples on the morning show, right? From Andre to Sally Ann, and the ability that, you know, you didn't have to look at race, you looked at delivery of a quality news product in the show. I think he was one of the pioneers for that, not only here, but in this country.
Sure.
And I think moving forward, y'all represent, hey, the issues. You know, issues with a rhythm. You know,
yeah, there we go. Get in the groove, literally.
Issues with some second line. And I think that'll continue. But he could have a good time and then ask you a serious question about delivery of services.
Yeah, because it really was New Orleans.
Right.
Every bit of it.
I would say no doubt about it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us and sharing your thoughts, and we'll continue to have these discussions
Thank you
and
guys.
hear more. Yeah.
Blessings to the family.